Welcome, dear subscribers and curious listeners of my channel. Today, I decided to continue our journey into the mysterious world of Potter lore and share with you the top craziest fan theories. Enjoy, and remember, I'm not the author of these ideas and don't claim any of them to be true. These are just fascinating interpretations that make us see the story in a new light. Theory number 1, the hero Hogwarts needed. This theory concerns the events of the Chamber of Secrets and claims that Draco Malfoy secretly helped Harry, Ron, and Hermione. Fans believe that, like Dobby, Draco somehow learned about his father's plan to smuggle a dark artifact into Hogwarts. Realizing it could endanger the lives of half-blood students, Draco decided to interfere and secretly sabotage Lucius's plan. The key argument? The scene in Flourish and Blots where Draco tears a page out of a book. According to fans, that very page is the one later found in petrified Hermione's hand. After all, let's be honest, Hermione Granger would never have torn a page from a library book. In one version, Draco personally handed the page to Hermione. In another, he subtly guided the trio toward the truth by dropping hints. For example, during the Polyjuice scene, when Ron and Harry sneak into the Slytherin common room, Draco's remarks conveniently help them advance the investigation. And in the end, when Hermione was petrified, Malfoy supposedly placed the page describing the basilisk in her hand himself, knowing it was the only clue that could save the school. Of course, the theory has its flaws. Neither Lucius nor Draco knew who was inside the chamber, and the torn page scene isn't actually in the book. But still, it sounds intriguingly plausible, doesn't it? Theory number 2, everything happens for a reason. This theory claims that Harry himself made his relatives cruel. Harry Potter is a Horcrux, carrying a fragment of Voldemort's soul. Just as the diary drove Ginny insane and the locket drained Harry and Ron's happiness, Harry's mere presence may have slowly made the Dursleys angrier and more aggressive over 10 years. In other words, Harry unconsciously affected their psyche, radiating the same dark energy that surrounded every Horcrux. Skeptics argue that Professor McGonagall described the Dursleys as the worst sort of muggles imaginable even before Harry was left on their doorstep. But in the book, the original English phrasing is softer. You couldn't find two people who are less like us. So perhaps Harry really did amplify their worst traits. Theory number 3, a very old friend. One of the wildest, yet oddly well-argued, theories claims that Albus Dumbledore is actually Ron Weasley as an adult time traveller. According to supporters, Ron once travelled back in time to live a second life as Dumbledore, to prepare the world for Voldemort's final defeat. They point to numerous similarities: tall, red-haired, freckled, long-nosed. Both love sweets, share a mischievous sense of humour, and even use similar phrases. One of the most touching proofs is Dumbledore's deepest desire, a pair of woolen socks. Fans link this to Ron's nostalgia for his mother's care, Mrs. Weasley, who knitted socks for her children every year. Yes, it sounds like pure fan nonsense, but the coincidences are striking. Maybe that's why this theory remains one of the fandom's all-time favourites. Theory number 4, the one that even Rowling got tired of. Remember the snake Harry freed in the Philosopher's Stone? According to some fans, that snake was Nagini, Voldemort's loyal companion. This idea spread so widely that many people still believe Rowling confirmed it in an interview. The problem? That interview never existed. Rowling personally debunked the theory on Twitter in 2018, yet fans continue to circulate it. Meanwhile, the book explicitly says the snake was born and bred in the zoo, which makes it completely impossible for it to have been Nagini. Theory number 5. Double the pleasure. Why were Dementors always drawn specifically to Harry? Why did they appear wherever he was, ignoring everyone else? The answer is simple, at least according to this theory. Dementors sense two souls in one body. Since Harry carries a fragment of Voldemort's soul, he represents a double treat for them. That's why Dementors react more violently to him than anyone else. Before them stands a 2-course meal of human essence, the perfect feast for their hunger. Number 6, Severus Potter, Harry Snape. Some fans take the bond between Severus Snape and Harry Potter to a shocking level, claiming Snape is Harry's real father. The idea hinges on the notion that Lily and Severus, childhood friends turned enemies, never truly cut ties. They argue that Dumbledore discovered the truth and kept it secret to shield the boy from Voldemort's wrath. Suddenly, every bitter glance, every outburst in class, and every quiet moment of protection takes on a new meaning. In the Deathly Hallows, when Snape whispers, "Look at me," before he dies, fans interpret it as more than a farewell to Lily's memory. It's a final, desperate look at his son. The physical similarities only deepen the mystery. Harry's black hair, like his father's, fits Snape far better than James, whose hair is often described as untidy rather than dark. Both are gifted in potions, both share a sharp, brooding intelligence, and both carry the same haunted intensity in their eyes. "You have your mother's eyes," Snape says again and again, a phrase that under this theory becomes heartbreakingly literal. It's not just a reminder of love lost, but of a truth buried so deep that only Snape and Dumbledore ever knew. Madness, perhaps, but the kind of madness the wizarding world loves best. Number 7, Hermione, the daughter of Bellatrix Lestrange. Some fans claim that Hermione Granger's brilliance cannot be explained by mere talent. They believe she was born not to Muggles, but to Bellatrix and Rodolphus Lestrange, a child hidden away to protect her from Voldemort's wrath. The idea reads like fan fiction, yet it lingers because of its poetic symmetry. The daughter of the Dark Lord's most loyal follower grows up to fight against him. Her unmatched power, her fierce moral code, and her courage under pressure all seem to suggest a heritage steeped in strong, dangerous magic. Supporters point to the eerie resemblance between Hermione and Bellatrix, especially in the Deathly Hallows film when Hermione disguises herself as Bellatrix. "Good morning," she says, awkwardly, trying to imitate the witch's tone. For a brief moment, she looks shockingly natural in that role. Fans took that scene as symbolic. Not a disguise, but a glimpse of her hidden origin. Rowling never confirmed such a connection, of course, but the theory gives Hermione's story a delicious irony. The brightest witch of her age may carry the blood of darkness, proving once again that it's our choices, not our birth, that define who we are. Number 8. Dumbledore is death. Among all the fan theories, the idea that Dumbledore represents death itself stands out for its quiet beauty. The story of the three brothers mirrors the entire saga. Voldemort, obsessed with power, takes the Elder Wand, the first brother. Snape, haunted by love and loss, mirrors the second. And Harry, who walks willingly into death, becomes the third. But when the last brother greeted death as an old friend, readers saw something familiar. Dumbledore waiting for Harry in the radiant calm of King's Cross Station. The wise old man in white, welcoming the boy he has guided all his life. The clues feel deliberate. Dumbledore possesses all three Deathly Hallows. He owns the Elder Wand, finds the Resurrection Stone, and holds the cloak before returning it to Harry. "You are the true master of death," he tells Harry, not because Harry conquered it, but because he accepted it. When Harry asks in The Deathly Hallows, is this real? Or has this been happening inside my head? Dumbledore's serene answer, of course it is happening inside your head, but why on earth should that mean that it is not real? Echoes Death's timeless patience. In that moment, Dumbledore becomes the embodiment of what death could be. Not a cold end, but a gentle guide. He doesn't take Harry's life. He offers him a choice: stay or return, live or rest. The boy chooses life, and death smiles, stepping back. It's the most peaceful interpretation imaginable, that the greatest wizard of all was not a conqueror of death, but death's kindest face. Number 9, it was all in Harry's head. Some readers say the magic of Hogwarts never existed outside Harry's mind. They see the entire saga as the dream of a lonely boy trapped beneath the stairs, a desperate attempt to escape a world that never loved him. Locked away, bruised and forgotten, Harry created a second life, a place where he mattered, where he was chosen. A boy like that, they argue, would need to imagine power just to survive. Every symbol in the story fits the pattern. Voldemort becomes the face of trauma, the terror that returns no matter how many times you defeat it. Dumbledore is the kind, wise father Harry never had. "Do not pity the dead, Harry, pity the living," he says, in The Deathly Hallows, sounding more like the voice of Harry's own conscience than a real person. Hogwarts, the castle with its moving staircases and secret rooms, becomes the mind itself. Shifting, unpredictable, but still a home. The theory finds its cruelest evidence in the scene at King's Cross. When Harry dies, he meets Dumbledore in a bright, empty station, a place between life and death. "Is this real?" he asks. "Or has this been happening inside my head?" Dumbledore smiles and answers, "Of course it is happening inside your head, Harry, but why on earth should that mean that it is not real?" For fans of this theory, that line is the key. It's Rowling's way of admitting that the whole story might be a dream. And when the train arrives, its meaning changes. It's not a journey back to life. It's the final step away from it. The whistle blows and the fantasy begins to fade. The cupboard under the stairs grows quiet again. Maybe Harry never left Privet Drive at all. Maybe the magic was the only thing keeping him alive, a flicker of hope in a world too cruel for a small, forgotten boy. Number 10. The Dursleys knew everything. Some fans see the Dursleys not as cruel guardians, but as terrified ones. They believe the family knew the truth, that Harry carried a fragment of Voldemort's soul inside him. According to this theory, Dumbledore told them everything the night he left the baby on Privet Drive. Imagine that moment, a crying infant, a lightning-shaped scar, and a letter explaining that within this child lived part of the darkest wizard of all time. How would any ordinary couple react? Fear would be inevitable. Their behavior suddenly makes sense. Vernon's trembling anger whenever Harry mentioned magic. Petunia's desperate attempts to keep him normal. Dudley's nightmares after the Dementor attack in the Order of the Phoenix, when he saw something in Harry that terrified him. Maybe he didn't see a spell, that maybe he glimpsed the darkness hiding inside his cousin. He knew something evil was nearby, Rowling writes. Fans interpret that line as literal, not symbolic. If the Dursleys were acting out of fear, not hatred, their cruelty takes on a tragic tone. Every cold glance, every slammed door, every whispered conversation between Vernon and Petunia could have been born of anxiety, the unbearable tension of living with a boy who carried a piece of the Dark Lord's soul. They weren't trying to suppress Harry's magic. They were trying to contain it, to keep the world safe, to keep themselves sane. And when Dumbledore finally came to move Harry away in the Deathly Hallows, Petunia's reaction, that silent, trembling moment at the door, gains new weight. "You didn't just lose your sister," Dumbledore might have once told her. "You're protecting her murderer's shadow." The Dursleys, once villains in Harry's story, become prisoners of a secret too dark to bear, loving and hating the boy who was never entirely himself. Number 11. Harry Potter is Voldemort. Some fans believe that Harry Potter and Lord Voldemort are not enemies at all. They are the same person, split in two. According to this eerie theory, the night in Godric's Hollow didn't end with a murder and survival. It created a fracture in time itself. The killing curse, Avada Kedavra, didn't destroy the Dark Lord. It reshaped him. His soul, stripped of its body, clung to the nearest vessel, the baby in the crib. In that moment, Voldemort was reborn as Harry Potter, starting again as a child, without memory, but carrying the same spark of darkness inside. The theory claims that this is why their minds are bound together. Harry dreams what Voldemort sees. He feels the Dark Lord's rage and pain. Even the ability to speak Parseltongue, the language of serpents, becomes more than an accident. It's a whisper of identity bleeding through. When Harry shouts, "Stop!" at the snake in the Philosopher's Stone, the zookeeper stares in disbelief, and Harry doesn't even realize what he's done. The serpent stares back and says, "Brazil, here I come." For fans, that moment isn't just magical. It's the first sign that the boy and the monster share one voice. They point to Harry's temper and flashes of anger, his bursts of cruelty when he's alone with the Horcrux. "I'm the chosen one," he snaps at Hermione in The Half-Blood Prince, his words colder than usual. Was that teenage arrogance, or a fragment of Voldemort surfacing through him? Their connection is more than symbolic. It's biological, spiritual, and terrifying. Every scar, every vision, every shared heartbeat hints that Harry isn't fighting a stranger, he's fighting his own reflection. And then there's the haunting symbolism of his name. Potter, one who shapes clay. Voldemort, in trying to defeat death, may have unknowingly shaped himself into something new. He moulded his own soul, and that soul became Harry. In this light, the prophecy, "Neither can live while the other survives," takes on a chilling meaning. They cannot both exist because they were never truly two. One life split in half, doomed to destroy itself in an endless circle. Number 12. Hermione, the heir of Salazar Slytherin. Some fans believe that Hermione Granger hides a secret deeper than anyone could imagine, a legacy that reaches back to one of Hogwarts' founders himself, Salazar Slytherin. The idea sounds absurd at first. How could the brightest Muggle-born witch of her generation descend from the man who despised Muggle blood? Yet the more you look, the more the puzzle pieces seem to fit. Hermione's natural talent for complex magic, her precision in potion-making, and her powerful mental discipline resemble the traits once attributed to Slytherin's own followers. There's a moment in the Chamber of Secrets that many fans point to as proof. When Hermione discovers the truth about the monster, she faces the image of the basilisk, Slytherin's ancient guardian, through a mirror. She doesn't panic, she acts. The calm logic she shows in that instant feels almost instinctive, as if the serpent's presence doesn't terrify her the way it should. Petrified, the book says, she had a torn page from a library book clutched in her hand. That detail became symbolic for fans, a descendant of Slytherin, stopping his own monster with knowledge, not fear. Supporters of the theory argue that magic runs in bloodlines like hidden rivers. Even if Hermione was raised by Muggles, the ancient current of Slytherin's magic might have awakened in her. Her parcel-tongue-like affinity for understanding the logic of serpents, her ability to master spells far beyond her age, all of this could be echoes of a heritage buried for centuries. After all, the founder's blood was never truly lost. It only hid among ordinary families, waiting for the right mind to revive it. And what a perfect irony it would be. The founder, who rejected Muggleborns, unknowingly fathering a lineage that would one day produce the brightest of them all. Hermione, the girl who fought prejudice, who stood beside Harry when pureblood ideals fell apart, would then become living proof that greatness in magic has nothing to do with ancestry. As Dumbledore once told her, it is our choices, Hermione, that show what we truly are, far more than our abilities. Number 13, Luna Lovegood, the true seer. Luna Lovegood has always stood apart from the rest of the Hogwarts students, with her silvery voice, faraway gaze, and the habit of wearing butterbeer cork necklaces or radish-shaped earrings. She appeared to exist in a realm slightly removed from ordinary human understanding. Many saw her as a harmless eccentric, a dreamer lost in her imagination. But for a growing number of Harry Potter fans, Luna's behavior is more than just whimsical. They believe she is a true seer, a modern-day prophet whose strange words and quiet wisdom carry genuine glimpses of the future. The idea may sound absurd at first, but the deeper one looks, the more difficult it becomes to dismiss. The foundation of this theory rests on one intriguing possibility. Luna's weirdness is not a symptom of madness or innocence, but the result of clairvoyant perception. Throughout the series, Luna repeatedly says things that initially seem detached from reality, only to later reveal profound truth. Her serene detachment, her acceptance of death, and her trust in the unseen mirror the qualities of an ancient oracle rather than those of a quirky schoolgirl. The same fans who once laughed at her talk of Nargles now wonder, was Luna truly seeing something others could not? Consider her first real interaction with Harry in Order of the Phoenix. When she comforts him after the death of Sirius Black, she says softly, "You're not mad. I can see them too. You're just as sane as I am." At that time, Luna was referring to the Thestrals, skeletal winged horses that only those who had witnessed death could see. But there is a deeper, almost chilling layer to that line. Fans have pointed out that Luna's reassurance carries an uncanny double meaning. It was as if she already knew Harry would soon lose someone close to him. Indeed, that very same year, Sirius would die. Luna's words, meant as comfort, now echo like an unintentional prophecy. It is as though she was gently preparing Harry for what fate had already written. The theory grows stronger when one recalls Luna's strange prediction regarding Sirius's return. In the same book, she insists to Harry that things lost have a way of coming back to us, in the end, if not always, in the way we expect. On the surface, it sounds like a whimsical platitude, but after Deathly Hallows, when Harry sees Sirius's spirit during his walk to meet Voldemort, the line takes on a prophetic quality. Luna seemed to understand long before anyone else that death was not the end. Her perception of reality blurred the boundary between the physical and the spiritual, allowing her to speak truths others could not yet comprehend. Luna's gift appears again during the battle at the Department of Mysteries. While others panic and lose focus, Luna behaves with a calm that seems otherworldly. She appears to sense danger before it happens, dodging attacks as if she knows their trajectory. Some fans suggest this is not mere intuition, but the manifestation of her psychic sensitivity. Her strange serenity in moments of chaos resembles that of a person who already foresees the outcome. One who knows that the path, though painful, is unfolding as it must. When Neville lies injured, Luna's voice remains soft, even gentle, as she encourages him. "We'll get them," she says. "It's just a matter of time." Again, her words feel like a glimpse into inevitability. The argument becomes even more persuasive when one examines Luna's belief in creatures that others dismiss as myths. Nargles, rackspurts, and crumple-horned snorkax are all examples of her unique worldview. At first, these seem like figments of a fanciful imagination. Yet time after time, elements of Luna's supposed delusions gain partial confirmation. The Thestrals, for instance, were also once thought to be imaginary. Luna's father, Xenophilius Lovegood, publishes articles in the Quibbler about things no one else dares to discuss. And though most of them sound absurd, a surprising number turn out to hold hidden truths. Could it be that Luna inherited not just her father's curiosity, but a far older gift, the ability to perceive layers of the world hidden from ordinary eyes? Her name itself has drawn much speculation. Luna means moon, a celestial body long associated with intuition, cycles, and visions. The moon illuminates the night, but only partially, revealing truths in fragments and shadows. In many mythologies, the moon governs the mind of prophets and dreamers. Her surname, Lovegood, meaning love good, or beloved of goodness, aligns her with ancient seers whose names symbolized purity of purpose. Prophets, both real and mythical, often carried names with moral or spiritual undertones, names that bound them to their destiny. Fans argue that J.K. Rowling may have chosen Lovegood intentionally as a subtle clue that Luna's role was not comedic relief but divine insight disguised as eccentricity. One of the most remarkable examples of Luna's foresight occurs during Bill and Fleur's wedding in Deathly Hallows. While others dance and laugh, Luna gazes at Harry, who is disguised as another guest, and identifies him instantly. "Hello, Harry Potter," she says serenely, her eyes unfocused yet certain. No one else, not even his closest friends, recognizes him through the Polyjuice Potion's disguise. How could she? Fans argue this moment is irrefutable evidence that Luna perceives beyond physical appearance. She sees essence, not surface. Her recognition of Harry when logic said it was impossible reveals that her sight functions on a mystical plane. Number 14. Neville Longbottom, the real chosen one. It all began with a prophecy whispered in the dim light of a dusty orb at the Department of Mysteries. A prophecy that could have belonged to more than one boy. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches. Born to those who have thrice defied him. Born as the 7th month dies. When Professor Trelawney uttered those words, two names fit the description: Harry Potter and Neville Longbottom. Yet fate, or perhaps Dumbledore, made a choice that would forever change the course of wizarding history. Fans have long believed that this choice was not as simple as it seemed. What if Neville, not Harry, was the true chosen one all along? Neville Longbottom was born on July 30, 1980, just one day before Harry. His parents, Frank and Alice Longbottom, were Aurors, members of the original Order of the Phoenix, and some of Voldemort's most persistent adversaries. They too had thrice defied him, just like James and Lily Potter. But where Harry's story began with the tragic murder of his parents, Neville's began with a cruelty of a different kind. His parents were tortured into madness by Bellatrix Lestrange and her followers. In both cases, the Dark Lord left behind an orphan. Two boys, both marked by his terror, both connected to that single, haunting prophecy. The theory that Neville is the true chosen one begins with this shared origin, but it goes deeper. Fans argue that Dumbledore, ever the strategist, deliberately guided events to make Voldemort believe Harry was the boy mentioned in the prophecy. Voldemort, with his obsession for blood purity, chose to target the half-blood child, Harry, over the pure-blood Neville. In doing so, he fulfilled the very prophecy he feared. But what if Dumbledore anticipated this? What if, in his infinite caution, he allowed Voldemort to mark the wrong child, using Harry as a shield to protect the real chosen one? Neville's entire life seems to mirror Harry's, but in a quieter, more tragic rhythm. While Harry grew up under the roof of the Dursleys, Neville was raised by his strict grandmother, Augusta Longbottom, who constantly reminded him of the bravery of his parents. "Gran says I'm not as good as them," Neville once confessed with shame. His self-doubt became his defining feature, just as Harry's fame defined him. Both boys were shaped by loss, but while Harry's grief turned outward into defiance, Neville's turned inward into quiet perseverance. Throughout their years at Hogwarts, the two boys often stood on opposite sides of the same fate. When the Sorting Hat nearly placed Harry in Slytherin, Neville trembled just at the idea of being in Gryffindor. When Harry broke rules to fight injustice, Neville broke down trying to follow them. Yet in the first year, Neville's moment of courage became one of Dumbledore's most memorable lessons. It takes a great deal of bravery to stand up to our enemies, but just as much to stand up to our friends. This line, spoken at the end of the Philosopher's Stone, is often cited by fans as the first sign that Neville's courage, though small and unnoticed, carried a deeper significance. The Chosen One, after all, is not defined by power, but by heart. As the years passed, Neville's path grew darker, reflecting Harry's struggles in strange and symbolic ways. In the Chamber of Secrets, Neville struggled in Professor Snape's class, much as Harry struggled under the weight of suspicion and fear. In The Prisoner of Azkaban, Neville faced the boggart, which transformed into Snape, the embodiment of his deepest fear. Yet with Professor Lupin's guidance, he conquered it with laughter. "Ridiculous," he shouted, dressing Snape in his grandmother's hat and clothes. It was a small victory, but symbolically profound. Neville had faced fear with humour and heart, the same traits that allowed Harry to face Dementors later. Courage in both boys came not from skill, but from defying terror. Then came the Goblet of Fire, when the Triwizard Tournament thrust Harry into the spotlight. Neville, in contrast, was a quiet helper, the one who gave Harry the gillyweed that allowed him to survive the second task. This small act of kindness and knowledge saved Harry's life. And yet few noticed that Neville had been the source of Harry's salvation. In that moment, fans argue, the symbolism of the Chosen One shifted again. The boy overlooked, underestimated, and ignored had just ensured the survival of the supposed saviour. By the Order of the Phoenix, Neville's transformation began in earnest. He joined Dumbledore's army, standing beside Harry as one of his most loyal and determined followers. When asked why he was fighting, Neville's answer was not about glory or destiny. It was personal. "I'll join you," he said, his voice trembling, "because I want to do something." The torture of his parents was no longer a story told about him. It became his reason to fight. At the Department of Mysteries, Neville showed a defiance that rivaled Harry's. Even with a broken nose, cursed hands, and blood in his eyes, he refused to give up. "You'll have to kill me," he shouted at Bellatrix. In that moment, he was no longer the timid boy who lost his toad. He was a soldier in the same war that had destroyed his family. Number 15. Hogwarts is alive. A dim candle flickered in the portrait-lined corridors of the castle as though responding to unseen breath. The walls of Hogwarts seemed to pulse, to breathe, not in a ghostly echo, but in the deliberate, knowing rhythm of a creature alive. Fan theorists argue that the castle is not mere stone and mortar, but a sentient being, a living magical organism with consciousness. In this vision, when Hermione Granger wandered the moving staircases late at night, the castle was reshaping itself to guide or to hide or to test her. The corridors that shift, the hidden rooms, the sealed doors, all become evidence that Hogwarts watches and chooses. Potter fans point to the moment when, during Harry's first year, the third-floor corridor that guards the trapdoor to the Sorcerer's Stone is magically sealed when Snape appears, preventing access to the stone. The doors do not simply jam, they slam shut, as if Hogwarts itself intervenes. In the Chamber of Secrets, Harry and Ron find they cannot reach Ginny until secret passages open or close, almost by whim. In that moment, the castle acts as protector, manipulating architecture to keep its children safe. The shifting staircases seen on Hermione's surprise when the stair she expected to lead to the Gryffindor Tower takes her somewhere else entirely are more than quirks. They are conscious changes orchestrated to hide or reveal. The theory holds that Hogwarts does not tolerate intrusion by dark forces lightly. When Harry confronted the basilisk, the chamber's entrances and water flow, the very geometry of the tunnel, may have been influenced by Hogwarts' will. The castle draws strength when danger is near, opening secret passages like the one through the bathroom to help Harry. Likewise, when Death Eaters broke in during Book 7, passages collapsed, doors barred themselves, and hidden rooms, like the Room of Requirement, activated in defense. It is as if Hogwarts sensed mortal danger and mobilized its internal systems. Supporters of the theory argue that the Sorting Hat is merely a voice conductor, a medium through which Hogwarts expresses its intelligence. When the Hat debates whether to place Harry in Slytherin or Gryffindor, the deliberation is interpreted by believers as the castle asserting its will through the Hat. The Hat asks, "Are you sure? You could be great, you know, and Slytherin will help you on the way to greatness." That you know is faculty, sentience nudging. When the Hat pauses before saying Gryffindor, that pause is not hesitation, but Hogwarts weighing the choice in its own mind. Thus the Sorting Hat is not independent, but a channel, the castle's voice. This notion gains force in the idea that Hogwarts feeds on student emotion. Fear, hope, love, determination, anguish, these are not incidental, they are fuel. The castle amplifies magic through emotional energy. Consider Harry's terror when facing Dementors in the third year. The feeling so intense that the castle corridors seem to press closer, the air growing heavier. In the Battle of the Astronomy Tower, the shock and fury of students and teachers echo through halls, powering wards and enchantments. The school becomes stronger in high emotion, harnessing energy to reinforce magical shields and even heal damage. A striking example arises in the fight at Hogwarts during the Final War. The castle survived what should have been cataclysmic damage. Walls cracked, towers pierced, enchantments broken, but the castle did not fall. Believers of this theory see that as proof, Hogwarts preserved itself to defend its children. When Harry faces Voldemort in the Great Hall, the ceiling refuses to shatter, windows hold, the stones underfoot remain firm. The castle protects as a living entity defends its heart. Hidden support collages, secret structural magics awaken, corridors seal off, as though Hogwarts channels all its strength in defense. Another convincing moment, in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, when Professor McGonagall sends the first years away during the Shrieking Shack confrontation, staircases and corridors shift. Harry and Hermione's desperate retreat through hidden tunnels led by the map and the castle's secret ways. These secret ways only exist because Hogwarts conceals them. When Aldous Dumbledore summons Fawkes to rescue Harry in the Chamber of Secrets, the Phoenix's path is guided through corridors that open at exactly the right time. Even portraits murmur warnings reacting to trespassers. The walls know. Consider the voices in paintings. Portraits whisper secrets. Phineas Nigellus Black warns Sirius Black. Bring him to the school, murmuring across frames. When the fat lady's portrait has been slashed, the students react with confusion, as though the portrait itself has been wounded, not just a painting. The murmurs behind frames are like a nervous system. Hogwarts uses portraits as sensors. Through them it hears footsteps, senses intrusion, whispers cues. The castle's ears lie hidden behind oil, canvas, frame. Even the mirror of Erased could be seen as an interface between Hogwarts' desires and a student's heart. Harry stares longingly, but the castle, aware of his longing, may feed off that emotional intensity, casting the image in response. The strength of the reflection grows with his desire. The mirror does not change by chance. It is sympathetic magic in a living environment. The castle senses what Harry wants and projects. Thus, Hogwarts coaxed him to look deeper, to reveal his inner need, and in doing so, captures emotional energy. Fans examine the Horcrux attack in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. When Voldemort casts the killing curse at Harry in the Forbidden Forest, and Harry is later caught in the castle during the final battle, the magical defences of Hogwarts reassert themselves. The protective enchantments over the school, such as the anti-disapparition jinx and various battle wards, act as immune responses. The castle responds to foreign spells like antibodies, resisting intrusion. When ghosts like nearly headless Nick roam and Peeves causes havoc, Hogwarts may tolerate them because they are part of the organism. But when creatures like Death Eaters or Dementors intrude, Hogwarts fights back. Number 16. The Dursleys were under a spell. The treetops of Privet Drive trembled under hopeless summer skies long before Harry uttered his first curse. Yet behind that facade of quiet suburbia, a secret spell silently exerted its will. A distortion of emotion, cast by Dumbledore himself, to guard the boy who lived. That enchantment, invisible and insidious, warped the hearts of the Dursleys. Not born of dark magic or inherited cruelty, but forged by a sacrificial protective charm that twisted affection, smothered empathy, amplified disdain. When young Harry arrived, unwanted and powerless, the walls of number 4 Grimmauld Lane, in this case number 4 Privet Drive, buzzed with enchantment's hum, shaping the daily torment as logic. Thus the Dursleys' coldness, their venom, was never innate. It was the recoil of a spell working too well. In ordinary life, Vernon Dursley lay back in his armchair reading the Daily Mail, fists clenching at quiet around him, until the charm hissed through the walls, pushing his eye toward the cupboard under the stairs. His irritation flared, railing against magic, against the very presence of the boy, against anything that threatened the normalcy he tried to maintain. That enchantment, designed to make the house less hospitable to dark forces, proud magic seekers, and even Dementors, forced the Dursleys into perpetual hostility against magic itself. Their rancour toward witches and wizards, their obsessive denial, was not pure bigotry, but the echo of an emotional distortion. Spell's residue. One sees this in Petunia's whispered mutters when she glimpses unusual signs. The letter from Hogwarts slipping through the grate, the Ashwinder's ashes, her features twisting with rage. But that rage is more than maternal fear. It is the distortion spell amplifying every flicker of unease into full-blown hatred. The moment she reads the cupboard under the stairs on that first letter, her eyes flare. She sees in that letter not the promise of education, but a dagger aimed at her carefully constructed mundanity. The spell magnifies her terror, focusing it outward. When Dudley, their only child, receives a birthday present, large packages of sweets and a toy train, he is doted on with overblown fury when anything goes wrong. His tantrums, his greed, his cruelty to Harry, all feed the distorter's currents. The spell does not discriminate, it warps all emotional signals in the house toward extremes of irritability, impatience, jealousy. Thus, when Dudley demands 6 presents one year, Vernon snarls, "There's only one Dudley Dursley and he's getting 6 presents." An assertion not only of parental pride, but a spike of irritation fueled beyond natural measure. As years pass, the distortion deepens. Every shriek, every slam of a door, every typhoid glance at Harry is a crease in the spell's feedback loop. The Dursleys become conditioned, victims as well as actors. They are forever negative, forever reactive, never reflective. The enchantment erodes internal restraint. It primes their minds to interpret even innocuous magical effects. A cat reading a map, a letter sealed with wax, as aggressions. When Harry receives his Hogwarts letters in bulk, the distortion forces Vernon's panic into fury. He fists through windows, he stamps on mail, he rages at the mere idea of correspondence. Yet, once Harry turns 17 and leaves Privet Drive, stepping into independence, unbound by the protective structure of the enchantment, the distortion's tether is cut. The spell, anchored by Harry's presence and by Dumbledore's original design, decays once its ward is gone. Suddenly the Dursleys, now unanchored, descend into calmer waters. Their bursts of anger dim. Petunia's face does not contort so often. Vernon's voice finds restraint. Dudley, now 19 or so by then, loses his petulant edge. Observant fans have noted this shift. After Harry's departure, the Dursleys' toxicity softens. This is not a moral redemption, Tiki, it is the spell's echo, fading. A concrete example, in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, after Dudley asks for Harry's help and Harry grudgingly gives him the address of a safe house, the Dursleys accept him leaving with quiet civility. This moment of peace, though brief and uneasy, would have been inconceivable during the years he lived under their roof. That sudden calm, the lack of screams or curses, the absence of slaps, it signals a letting go, a spell unmoored. Thus, the Dursleys' cruelty before 17 is not pure choice but overdetermined by a magical act. Their actions, refusing to write to Harry, denying him privacy, beating him, are magnified shadows of conflict, not conscious malevolence in full. The distortion forces all emotional nuance into polarized extremes. Love becomes loathing, fear becomes fury, indifference becomes aggression. They cannot moderate, they can only lash. This theory also gives purpose to Dumbledore's seemingly contradictory kindness toward them. Why would he leave Harry with the Dursleys, whose emotional atmosphere warps toward cruelty? Because the distortion spell placed a barrier against external magical intrusions into the house. Dark wizards, inquisitive witches, even dementors would feel through magical intuition that the house's emotional ripple opposed their entry at discomfort, confusion, repulsion. In effect, it was a ward that turned away the unwanted at the price of corroding its inhabitants' souls. Imagine a Death Eater arriving at Privet Drive. Even if he had the key, walking inside the home brings an assault on mood. Nausea of bitterness, sting of rage, disorientation of shifting loyalties. The spell renders the house inhospitable to magical intruders. Thus, characters like Voldemort or even Snape might avoid probing deeper into that household. The distortion is Dumbledore's ruthless protective measure, a fortress of internal hostility. Yet carelessly it spills inward. The Dursleys are collateral damage. Their personalities twist and harden. Vernon, once perhaps a mild if narrow man, becomes a tyrant. Petunia, once jealous but humane, becomes brittle and resentful. Dudley, once a spoiled child, becomes the cruelty mirror for everything they fear. They have little capacity to act otherwise. The distortion ensnares them deeply. We may speculate that Dumbledore cast this spell not at the moment Harry was left with them, but earlier, perhaps the moment the Potters fell, when the protective charm needed reinforcement beyond the sacrificial shield. With the Dursleys, he wove a subsidiary layer, a spell of emotional distortion keyed to magical presence. The house became a soul pressure chamber, a controlled microclimate indoor, which magic would feel wrong. Over time, the distortion intensifies near full moons, near magical breakthroughs, near Harry's adolescence. When Harry's powers swell, the ripples in the protective spells heighten, feeding the distortion. That is why during Harry's teenage years the Dursleys are especially vicious, because their exposure to magic, letters, owls, visits, peaks, and the distortion struggles to maintain its boundary. Furious pushback results. In this reading, the Dursleys' calmer behavior post-Harry is both evidence of the spell's fade and a small redemption for their humanity. They are not monsters by birth, but casualties of protective magic. Their change does not excuse their earlier cruelty, but shifts blame from innate evil to arcane consequence. It reframes the narrative. Harry's childhood wasn't just abuse by unloving guardians, it was abuse magnified by protective magic gone awry. Thus, fans who champion this theory see the Dursleys not as villains but as bitter guardians of one of the greatest protective wards ever placed. Their harshness was warped love in distortion. When Harry finally breaks free, the enchantment's chains loosen. They become, for a moment, people again, fragile, uncertain, no longer bound to perpetual hostility. In every moment of their cruelty, from slamming doors to scowling insults, we may hear the hum of that distortion spell. Each angry word, each sneer at magic, they are ripples, not originals. The Dursleys in this vision are tragedies, guardians chosen, warped, abused by the very magic meant to protect. And only in Harry's departure does the distortion unravel, leaving behind quiet, hollow relief. Number 17, Sirius Black, the Unwilling Traitor. There are theories in the Harry Potter universe that start quietly, whispered in corners of fan forums, and then grow into legends. One of the most haunting among them revolves around Sirius Black, the man accused of betraying his best friends, James and Lily Potter. Canon tells us that Peter Pettigrew was the real traitor, the one who sold them to Voldemort. Yet some fans propose a darker, more tragic version of the story, one that redefines everything we thought we knew about Sirius. According to this theory, Sirius really did betray the Potters, but not by choice. He was cursed, turned into something far more horrifying than a Death Eater, a human beacon. The theory rests on an idea almost too cruel to imagine, that Voldemort, master of dark enchantments, used an ancient forbidden spell to create what fans call a magical beacon. This curse, lost to time and long erased from the official records of the Ministry of Magic, transforms its victim into an unknowing transmitter. The cursed person doesn't reveal secrets willingly, instead their very presence radiates information, the magical coordinates of those they love most. In this theory, Sirius Black, unaware and defenseless, became the invisible thread that led Voldemort to Godric's Hollow. Supporters of the idea point to the strange inconsistencies surrounding the night the Potters died. Everyone believed Sirius had persuaded James and Lily to use Peter Pettigrew as their secret keeper, a clever trick meant to deceive Voldemort. But what if Sirius had already been compromised? If Voldemort had marked him with this curse during one of their past encounters, perhaps when the Order of the Phoenix fought the Death Eaters in 1980, then Sirius would have carried the doom of the Potters with him like a ticking magical clock. He didn't need to betray them in words. His very heartbeat might have guided Voldemort to the house hidden by the Fidelius charm. There is something disturbingly poetic about this possibility. Sirius spent 12 years in Azkaban tortured by the knowledge that his friends were dead and that everyone thought he had done it. But he never once said, I didn't betray them. Instead, he told Harry, it wasn't me, it was Peter. On the surface, that's a clear denial. But when read through the lens of this theory, the words take on a different, heartbreaking meaning. Sirius might have known at some level that he was involved, that something inside him had been twisted, used, turned against the people he loved most. He wasn't lying, he simply couldn't bear to tell the whole truth. One passage in The Prisoner of Azkaban stands out with eerie resonance. When Sirius first confronts Harry in the Shrieking Shack, he says, I would have died before I betrayed them. Readers have always taken this as proof of his loyalty, but those who support the beacon theory interpret it differently. Perhaps he did die, in a sense. The man he was before the curse no longer existed after Voldemort's spell. The betrayal wasn't an act of will, but an act of magic. He would have died rather than betray James and Lily, but Voldemort ensured that he didn't have the choice. There's also the curious detail of Sirius's unusual sensitivity to magic. When he speaks to Harry about Azkaban, he describes how the Dementors could not fully destroy him because he knew he was innocent, because there was something left inside him that the darkness couldn't consume. What if that resilience wasn't simply moral strength? What if it was the lingering residue of the same dark magic that made him a beacon? Dementors feed on despair and guilt, but they are drawn to curses too. Maybe they felt the taint of Voldemort's spell within him and left it untouched, confused by its nature. A fragment of evil interwoven with a soul that refused to surrender. A moment from Order of the Phoenix also seems to align with this interpretation. When Harry communicates with Sirius through the fireplace at Grimmauld Place, the flames flicker strangely. Sirius grows restless, urging him not to contact him again. Fans often interpret that as simple paranoia, but those who believe in this theory suggest another reading. Sirius might have felt the echo of the curse, a tug in the air, a pull between himself and Harry, a faint awareness that his presence still transmitted danger. You must not come here, he warns. It's too risky. What if he wasn't only referring to Death Eaters and the Ministry, but to himself? The concept of the magical beacon appears in a few obscure references within the extended lore of the wizarding world. Some magical historians mention a dark spell used during the First Goblin Rebellion, a curse that caused entire families to be tracked and annihilated because one member had been marked. The Ministry supposedly outlawed it centuries ago, classifying it as an unforgivable extension of the Imperious curse. If Voldemort rediscovered it, and there is every reason to believe he could, he might have used Sirius as his experiment, ensuring that the Order would unknowingly deliver him the Potters on a silver platter. There's another chilling layer. When Dumbledore explains the Fidelius charm to Harry, he emphasizes that the secret can only be revealed by the secret keeper. but he never says that magical energy can't leak from other sources. If Sirius's curse allowed Voldemort to sense the approximate location of the Potters, that would explain how Voldemort found them so quickly after the spell was cast. Peter may have provided the final key, but the curse could have already narrowed the search to one place. It was the perfect combination of betrayal and manipulation, human deceit mixed with dark sorcery. Imagine the agony of Sirius when he realized it. Perhaps during his time in Azkaban, in one of those long, endless nights when sanity flickered like the dying light of a candle, he pieced it together. Perhaps he felt it inside him, a wrongness that had no name. The Dementors could not erase it, and he could not forget it. He escaped not only to clear his name, but to make peace with his guilt. His mission to protect Harry was more than friendship's legacy. It was an act of atonement. He was watching over the last person whose parents he had, even unwillingly, destroyed. This theory gives new weight to his death in the Order of the Phoenix. When Sirius falls through the veil after Bellatrix's curse, Harry describes the moment as if Sirius is being drawn away by something unseen. Many see that as the pull of death itself, but the believers of the beacon theory see it differently, as the final extinguishing of the curse. The veil was ancient magic, perhaps older than the curse that bound him. When Sirius crossed it, the spell finally broke. His death was not meaningless, it was release. The emotional logic of the theory is compelling. It reimagines Sirius not as a falsely accused hero, but as a man caught in a web of fate spun by the Dark Lord. It makes him both guilty and innocent, the victim of magic's deepest cruelty. It also deepens the tragedy of James and Lily's trust. They believed in Sirius because they knew his heart, and they were right. His betrayal was not of his heart, but of his body, of magic that turned his loyalty into a weapon against those he loved. In the end, this theory is less about the mechanics of a curse and more about the nature of guilt. Sirius's story has always been about the weight of blame, about the human need to assign fault when the truth is unbearable. If this theory were true, then Sirius's imprisonment was not just wrongful, it was cosmic irony. The man accused of betrayal was punished for a crime he did not commit, but also for one he could never have prevented. It explains his bitterness, his recklessness, and his desperate need to protect Harry even when it endangered them both. It also casts a haunting shadow over his relationship with Remus Lupin. When they reunite in the Shrieking Shack, there is a flicker of hesitation before Remus believes him. Fans often read that as simple doubt, but perhaps Sirius saw something else in Remus's eyes. Fear. The curse might have carried an aura, a faint magical trace that even a skilled wizard like Lupin could sense. When Lupin finally embraced him, he may have been embracing a man who carried the ghost of Voldemort's power within him. And so, the story of Sirius Black becomes something mythic, a parable about how evil corrupts not just the willing, but the good. Voldemort's genius was not only in killing, but in twisting love into destruction. By turning Sirius into an unwilling traitor, he achieved something more lasting than murder. He shattered the trust of an entire generation of wizards. Even after his death, suspicion lingered. The world never truly forgave Sirius Black, and perhaps it never could. But somewhere in that grey area between innocence and guilt lies the truth that fans of this theory find irresistible, that Sirius was the true tragic heart of the saga, the cursed friend whose love became the very thing that doomed him. It's a disturbing thought, that loyalty itself can be turned into a weapon. Yet it fits the world of Harry Potter, where magic always exacts a price, and where the line between light and darkness is never quite clear. The theory may never be proven, and perhaps it shouldn't be. But once you've heard it, it's impossible to forget. The image of Sirius Black, laughing madly in Azkaban, haunted by a betrayal he never meant to commit, lingers long after the book is closed, a silent echo of the spell that doomed him. Number 18, everything was planned by Fawkes. In the moment when Harry Potter is ensnared by the basilisk in the Chamber of Secrets, facing his doom as venom and fangs bear down upon him, a sudden flash of crimson light blazes in his vision. The beak of Fawkes seizes the venomous fang in its talons and disappears, leaving the basilisk wounded and powerless. That flash is ordinarily attributed to Dumbledore's planning or the magical nature of the Phoenix. But what if behind every such intervention was not Dumbledore's foresight, but Fawkes's own slow, insidious orchestration? The theory among a fervent cadre of fans asserts that the Phoenix is not a mere loyal companion, but the mastermind, the clandestine manipulator, behind every twist in Harry's life. In Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, when the sacred sword of Gryffindor appears to Harry in the basilisk's lair, we accept the official explanation, that the sword, imbued with the properties of the sorting hat and summoned by worthiness, manifests. Yet consider, Fawkes brought the sorting hat into the chamber in the first place. The hat yields the sword only in the presence of a phoenix. Fawkes thus acts as the gatekeeper to that legendary weapon. The conventional reading is that the phoenix aided the hero. The radical reading is that Fawkes chose when Harry would receive that weapon. The timing, too perfect, strains credulity. Fawkes's interventions are scattered throughout the saga. In Order of the Phoenix, when Dumbledore's forces plan to lure Voldemort into revealing himself in the Department of Mysteries, Fawkes is quiet, but the impression lingers that he has observed carefully, waiting to act when the hour falls just so. In Half-Blood Prince, when Dumbledore is struck atop the tower, Fawkes appears seconds later, carrying Dumbledore's body away and healing his wounds in the Chamber of Secrets. Usually this moment is read as the last act of loyalty. But the fan theory argues that Fawkes arrives neither too early nor too late, exactly when he determined the narrative must shift. That intervention, they say, is not reactive but anticipatory. When Voldemort's snake, Nagini, disappears into the chamber via the piping network beneath Hogwarts, no one knows until much later how she got there. When the castle is sealed, no one notices the hidden passages. Fawkes, with centuries of memory and recurring existence, is hypothesized to know every corridor, secret shaft, and conduit. The bird that lives forever, or for centuries, could have mapped Hogwarts more fully than any human. In that interpretation, Fawkes influences which corridors open, which doors creak, which surprises await. He nudges events behind walls like a phantom editor shaping the story from the shadows. Fans point to the moment in Deathly Hallows when Harry, Hermione and Ron find themselves in Grimmauld Place, surrounded by animagus, boggarts and protective enchantments. No phoenix is present, yet subtle signs suggest Fawkes's lingering presence, faint echoes of light, moments when Dumbledore's portrait seems to glow with awareness. The theory would argue that Fawkes is everywhere in spirit, standing behind the veil between life and death, orchestrating which dangers the trio will face and which paths they will escape. There's also the matter of prophecy. The prophecy in Order of the Phoenix states, "Neither can live while the other survives." That hinge, the turning point of the saga, was foreseen by Trelawney and sealed by Dumbledore, but perhaps manipulated by Fawkes. A phoenix, born of cycles, embodies both life and death. It perishes in flame and is reborn. Could Fawkes have planted the idea of prophecy itself into Dumbledore's mind, nudging him to speak of it so that destiny might track toward the confrontation he so desired? He who lives between the ashes might orchestrate the drama of lives. Yet the most compelling argument arises from the very end. In Deathly Hallows, after Harry defeats Voldemort, Fawkes appears in the sky above Hogwarts, soaring upward, faint and ethereal. We interpret that as farewell. The faithful bird leaves his master to rest. But in the theory's bold reading, Fawkes does not say goodbye. He vanishes temporarily to die and be reborn, awaiting a new cycle when darkness again threatens. The ending is not closure, but intermission. The true defender of light simply pauses before the next era. He does not retire. This suggestion implies that Dumbledore himself is, in large part, unaware of the depth of Fawkes' influence. Dumbledore calls Fawkes his friend, but the bird's eyes, written as filled with ancient wisdom, might hide a far greater agenda. Dumbledore, for all his cunning, can only guess at the hidden mechanisms at play. When the Phoenix arrives, Dumbledore welcomes it, but perhaps only sees the surface of a will infinitely older and subtler. One could ask, why would Fawkes favour Harry? The theory grants him the role of arbiter in the cosmic struggle between light and dark. Fawkes, across centuries, watches the cyclical rise of darkness, Grindelwald, Voldemort, unseen threats yet to come, and between cycles he reincarnates, carrying memories of past ages. When the time comes, he selects a mortal champion, nudging and guiding them to the final confrontation. Harry Potter is not by random destiny the hero. He is Fawkes' chosen conduit. The sword, the phoenix, the hidden aids, all are in service to Fawkes' timeless vigilance. But why not intervene more publicly? Because the beauty of the theory rests on secrecy. A phoenix that dominates too obviously would disrupt free will and sabotage the drama. Fawkes acts surreptitiously, giving illusions of chance, blessing Harry at key junctures without overt display. The more miraculous the moment, the more we chalk it up to magic or love, never to a phoenix plotting across centuries behind every roll of fate. Critics of the theory point to the times when Fawkes is absent, for example, in Chamber of Secrets before the crisis, or his absence when Harry fights Voldemort alone in the Ministry. But proponents say those absences are deliberate. Fawkes restrains himself until the stakes become existential. The Phoenix must preserve mystery. He intervenes only when the balance tilts catastrophically. He withholds his hand until the drama demands it, so that the narrative maintains tension. Imagine a scene unwritten in the books. Fawkes, perched in some remote sanctuary, remembering previous lives, watching Dumbledore's every move via whispered winds, gently shifting the currents of causality, moving a letter here, a key there, always working so that when time ripens, his pawn steps into the ring. He pulls strings invisibly, the pensive glimpses that tie Dumbledore's memories to Harry's path, the scattered Horcrux fragments, the subtle hints planted in Riddle's past, all as steps in the shape he has long envisioned. If this forward-looking phoenix theory holds, it reinterprets several lines in the texts. When Fawkes screams a long lamentation after Dumbledore's fall, we read loss and mourning. But in this light, that cry is a cycle ending, not merely a farewell. The lamentation echoes across ages as one life ends and the next readies itself. When he appears with silvery, soundless wings, we see only spectacle, but fans see portent. When he rearranged his feathers before the final fight, they see deliberation as though he's aligning his will, not just breathing. These moments, subtle in the original narrative, become charged with agency in the theory. Let us revisit Chamber of Secrets again. Harry hears Fawkes's cry ringing in his ears in the dark chamber. That cry, we are told, is both warning and blessing. But if one imagines Fawkes sending that cry intentionally, the bird is speaking across distance, shaping Harry's resolve. Later, when Fawkes brings the sorting hat and the sword, he might have known exactly when Harry's courage would break, exactly when the danger would peak. That is, Fawkes might have manipulated the chamber's traps, the basilisk's movement, the interval when Ginny was abducted, all with surgical calibration. Consider, too, the moment Harry speaks Parseltongue in the chamber and the basilisk obeys. It seems a property of Harry's heritage. But Fawkes, if he is influencing events, could have weakened the basilisk's resistance at the right time, subtly pivoting the creature's behavior. Such micro-shifts in magical energy could be invisible to human awareness, but perceivable to a phoenix that spans centuries. Thus, Fawkes could orchestrate not only that the basilisk appear, but that it respond to Harry in just the right way. When Voldemort regains corporeal form in Goblet of Fire, the resistance of the Order and the Ministry crumbles. So many variables shift. Fawkes does not act overtly, but the theory holds he watches, selects his moment, and begins subtle subversions, protecting Harry at the climax, reinforcing loyalty in Dumbledore's forces, coaxing Neville to retain courage, nudging Snape's double game to persist. The Phoenix plays an unseen chess game across the magical war. The theory pushes further even into magical mechanics. Phoenix tears heal, flames regenerate, ashes rebirth. These are not just magical properties, but expressive symbolism of Fawkes's role. Each death, renewal, healing is a coded message. Fawkes's tears heal Harry's basilisk wound. The Phoenix's rebirth suggests that in every dark age, Fawkes will be reborn. His ability to re-emerge from ashes is the emblem of the enduring light. The very pattern of his life mirrors the arc of the struggle between dark and light. Thus, Fawkes is not incidental, he is the narrative's root architect. One might see this as absurd, attributing to a magical bird the power to control destiny. Yet the internal logic holds that if one magical creature spans multiple lifetimes, retains memory across ages, travels distances in silence, then Fawkes is uniquely suited to be the grand manipulator. In that reading, every time Harry received aid, from Dumbledore, from friendly ghosts, from protective enchantments, it was because Fawkes had seeded that assistance long before. All battles, prophecies, alliances, threads woven by the invisible Phoenix. Thus the saga of Harry Potter becomes reframed, not merely a fight between hero and villain, but a long game played by a timeless guardian. The characters are actors on a stage, but Fawkes writes the script behind the curtain. Hermione's intellect, Ron's loyalty, Snape's ambivalence, even Voldemort's choices, all are parts of the tapestry Fawkes weaves. And in the final image, when Fawkes ascends, he is not departing. He is lying dormant until the next cycle demands his presence again. Number 19, Muggles are descendants of squibs. It all begins with a simple, unsettling thought whispered in the darker corners of Harry Potter fan forums. What if Muggles are not so different from wizards after all? The idea seems absurd at first, almost laughable, yet the more one thinks about it, the more it makes an eerie kind of sense. The theory claims that every Muggle alive today is a descendant of a squib, a non-magical child born to magical parents. In this view, the magical world and the non-magical one are not separate species, but branches of the same tree. Somewhere in the ancient past, that tree split in two, and one branch forgot what it truly was. The evidence begins where most strange truths in the wizarding world begin, with the exceptions. Hermione Granger, for instance, was born to Muggle parents, both dentists, both entirely ordinary. And yet by the age of 11 she could perform magic on the level of a young prodigy. How does that happen? Wizards say that sometimes a magical child is born in a Muggle family, but they rarely question why. The official explanation is thin. Magic sometimes appears in Muggle-born children. But if magic can appear from nothing, why doesn't it appear everywhere, in everyone? Why only in specific families, at specific times, with bloodlines that seem to awaken something dormant? The theory of the squib ancestry suggests that Hermione's magic didn't appear out of thin air. Instead, it was reawakened. Somewhere in her family tree, generations ago, there might have been a witch or wizard, someone whose magic faded, whose descendants learned to live among Muggles. Over time the blood diluted, but the spark remained, hidden deep in the soul. Every few generations that spark reignites, and that's when the Hogwarts letter arrives. It sounds romantic until you realize what it implies. If Muggles are descendants of squibs, then the line separating the two worlds is artificial, a wall built out of fear. The Statute of Secrecy, established in 1692, may not have been a protection of wizards from Muggles, but a protection of wizards from themselves. If too many Muggles rediscovered their magical origins, the fragile balance between both worlds might collapse. This could explain the Ministry's obsession with memory charms. When Arthur Weasley asked, "What exactly is the function of a rubber duck?" he wasn't just displaying curiosity, he was revealing how alien Muggles had become to their magical kin. Consider the case of Argus Filch, the squib caretaker of Hogwarts. He owned a correspondence course titled Quickspell, a correspondence course in beginner's magic. Why would such a course even exist if magic were an innate quality one either had or didn't have? The very idea suggests that squibs, and by extension their descendants, might possess a dormant, magical potential that can be triggered or trained. Filch's despair, his bitterness, might have been rooted in the knowledge that he almost had it, that magic was a locked door for which he had lost the key. What if that door could be reopened in his descendants? Another chilling clue lies in the way magic reacts to Muggles. When Harry first visited the Dursleys, strange things happened long before he knew what he was. The glass at the zoo vanished. His hair grew back overnight after being cut. He found himself on the roof of the school without knowing how. Aunt Petunia called it freakishness, yet she herself once confessed, "I saw that letter. I knew she was special. I knew she was different." She had once begged Dumbledore to let her come to Hogwarts. What if she wasn't entirely wrong to hope? Maybe she felt something, an echo of magic in her blood, the same echo that her son Dudley might have buried deep within. If Muggles truly descend from squibs, then the entire history of humanity must be intertwined with magic. Wars, inventions, miracles, all could be traces of forgotten power. Wizards often mock Muggle technology, but what if machines were Muggles' way of compensating for their lost magic? Electricity, flight, and communication might be subconscious attempts to rebuild what their ancestors once did with wands. After all, Dumbledore once told Harry, it is our choices that show what we truly are. Perhaps humanity's greatest choice was to replace instinctive power with crafted intelligence. The Ministry of Magic's Department of Magical Accidents and Catastrophes suddenly becomes far more suspicious under this light. Its memory modification squad doesn't just erase random incidents, It guards the boundary of knowledge. Imagine a Muggle scientist beginning to notice patterns, people whose emotions seem to alter physical surroundings, children whose anger bends reality. Those are not isolated accidents. Those are awakenings. Each obliviate spell may be less about protection and more about suppression, erasing not just memories but evidence of a shared ancestry. The wizards above ground and the humans below, both prisoners of an ancient pact of ignorance. Some fans call this the Great Forgetting. They claim that before the Statute of Secrecy, the world was not divided. Villages mixed magic and craft. Spells and songs were one and the same. When persecution began, squibs were often the ones left behind to blend in with the non-magical population, teaching them fragments of knowledge that later evolved into myths, religions, and science. Merlin, according to this theory, was not just a wizard, but the symbolic last bridge between worlds. When that bridge fell, history split in two, magical and mundane. But bloodlines never forgot. What would happen if that bloodline suddenly remembered? Some fan theorists imagine a global Potter apocalypse. They describe a morning when, without warning, millions of people wake up with magic coursing through their veins. Lights flicker, not from circuits, but emotions. Children float from their beds. Governments panic as logic itself breaks. The international statute of secrecy crumbles overnight. In this nightmare, or revelation, the wizarding world is forced out of hiding, not because they choose to, but because the sleeping half of humanity has awakened. There's a haunting poetry in this vision. Imagine the chaos in London, muggles unknowingly summoning cups of coffee, repairing broken windows with reparo, shouting Accio out of instinct, the ministry overwhelmed, unable to modify millions of memories at once. Hermione, perhaps now a professor, realizing that this was the truth all along, that she was not a miracle child, but a messenger of a coming storm. Fear of a name increases fear of the thing itself, Dumbledore once said. Maybe the name Muggle was created for that very reason, to separate, to diminish, to make others forget what they once were. Even the existence of Muggle-borns could be the proof. Take Lily Evans, Harry's mother, a Muggle-born witch whose power rivaled purebloods. Her sister Petunia, bitter and envious, represents the divide between those who awaken and those who sleep. What if the resentment of Muggles toward magic is not fear of the unknown, but jealousy of the forgotten? If once they, too, wielded power, then the entire hierarchy of the magical world collapses. Blood purity, that poisonous ideology the Malfoys worshipped, becomes meaningless. Every Muggle, no matter how ordinary, becomes a potential ancestor of wizards, or even a future one. There are whispers in fan communities that the Sorting Hat itself knows this truth. When it speaks of bravery, intelligence, loyalty, and cunning, it's not just choosing houses, it's recognizing ancient patterns of magic reborn in each child. The Hat never rejects a student because of their background. It sees beyond bloodlines. "You could be great, you know," it once murmured to Harry. Perhaps that greatness is not only his destiny, but humanity's collective one, the return of a long-lost ability. The magical creatures, too, might sense it. Centaurs often speak of human destiny in the stars. Firenze once said, "Whilst Mars is bright tonight." What if he wasn't predicting war but awakening? Creatures attuned to ancient energies might already feel the sleeping power stirring. Dementors drifting near cities, feeding on the anxiety of those subconsciously sensing something missing. House elves, bound to magic, trembling as the balance shifts. Even dragons hidden in remote valleys might roar louder, the echo of an era returning. This theory, wild as it seems, redefines the moral architecture of Rowling's universe. Wizards are not superior beings guarding secrets from lesser minds. They are survivors of a hidden civil war of the soul. Squibs were not failures but sacrifices left behind to ensure continuity. Muggles, then, are not outsiders. They are kin, amnesiacs walking through a world they once built with spells instead of machines. If this is true, then every act of cruelty from wizard to muggle becomes an act of self-denial, a rejection of one's own forgotten heritage. Fans who believe in this theory argue that J.K. Rowling may have hinted at it without confirming. Why else would Harry's scar react to magic, pain, and emotion in equal measure? Why else would Voldemort, obsessed with blood purity, fear the power of love, a force that seems both emotional and elemental? Love, after all, is the one magic that transcends blood. Perhaps it is the only universal spell left untouched by time, a remnant of that age when all humanity was magical. And so, the question lingers. If every muggle carries a dormant ember of magic, what will ignite it? Could it be emotion, knowledge, or perhaps something darker? The collective fear of extinction. The last enemy that shall be destroyed is death, was carved on the Potter's tombstone. Maybe that prophecy extends beyond Harry's story. Maybe it speaks of the day when humanity will no longer die as ordinary beings, but live as wizards reborn, reclaiming what was lost. On that day, the worlds will merge, the veil will fall, and the Potter apocalypse will not be an end, but a beginning. Number 20, Hogwarts as Purgatory. They say every great story hides another one beneath it, one that whispers through the pages rather than being written on them. Among the many theories that swirl around Harry Potter, few are as haunting as the idea that Hogwarts is not a school at all, but a kind of purgatory, a place between life and death where souls are tested, purified, and, perhaps, redeemed. According to this chilling interpretation, the boy who lived never lived at all. The killing curse that rebounded that night in Godric's Hollow did not simply fail, it claimed Harry's life. What follows in the 7 books is his journey through the afterlife, disguised as school years in the most beloved castle in literature. From the very beginning, this idea casts a new light on that fateful Halloween night. A baby struck by the darkest spell in existence should not have survived. Yet Harry does, or so we think. What if the lightning-shaped scar is not a mark of survival but a symbol of death itself, an eternal reminder that he has crossed the boundary between worlds? When Dumbledore later says, "To the well-organized mind, death is but the next great adventure," it suddenly sounds less like philosophy and more like a quiet revelation. Perhaps Dumbledore knows, and perhaps he has always known, that Harry's adventure began only after death. If Hogwarts is purgatory, its design begins to make an eerie kind of sense. It is a place beyond ordinary time, existing somewhere between the living and the dead. Its staircases move of their own accord, portraits speak, ghosts wander the halls, and no one truly grows old there, not really. Year after year, Harry returns to the same enchanted corridors, meeting trials that test not just his courage but his soul. The castle itself becomes a mirror of his inner world, shifting and changing as he learns, stumbles, and ultimately comes closer to peace. In this reading, the 4 houses of Hogwarts are not mere divisions of character, but symbols of spiritual trials. Gryffindor stands for courage, the strength to face one's own fears. Harry's sorting into Gryffindor marks the first step in his purification, for courage is the virtue that conquers death. Slytherin represents temptation, the hunger for power, and the lure of control. Again and again Harry faces this darkness within himself, when he can speak Parseltongue, when the Sorting Hat almost places him in Slytherin, when he wields power that frightens him. Hufflepuff stands for humility and faithfulness, virtues Harry learns through loyalty to friends, even at the cost of his own safety. And Ravenclaw, with its thirst for knowledge, reflects the wisdom that comes only through suffering, the understanding of what truly matters in the end. Each school year then becomes a stage in the cleansing of Harry's soul. In his first year, he learns courage through self-sacrifice. When he faces Professor Quirrell and the spirit of Voldemort, it is not strength or knowledge that saves him, but love, the same love that in this theory has already carried him into the afterlife. His triumph over the Mirror of Erised, where he sees not power but his family, shows the first victory over earthly desire. In the second year, the Chamber of Secrets tempts him with glory and fear, but again he chooses compassion, saving Ginny, forgiving himself for being different. Each act purifies him. A little more, the third year, the year of Sirius Black, deepens the idea of redemption. Harry believes he faces a murderer, but discovers instead a soul longing for justice and connection. "I don't care if you're my father's friend," he says in anger, yet it is forgiveness that ultimately sets him free. The Dementors, embodiments of despair and hopelessness, are perhaps the shadows of his own guilt and pain. His Patronus, that glowing stag, becomes a symbol of his purified soul, shining light into darkness. It is no coincidence that the spell to summon it is Expecto Patronum, literally, I await a protector, or in this case, the guardian of the soul. By the time the Goblet of Fire is lit, the tone of the story darkens. Death takes on presence. Cedric, Diggory's fall in the graveyard feels like the first real reminder that Harry's world is not of the living. The return of Voldemort, that ghostly fragment of soul, could symbolize the re-emergence of evil within Harry's own spiritual journey, the final sin to overcome. In this reading, Voldemort is not merely an enemy, but a part of Harry himself. The part that refuses to let go of power and control, the part that clings to fear of death. "There is no good and evil," Voldemort says, "there is only power." In purgatory, this temptation is the one every soul must confront. The fifth year, the Order of the Phoenix, mirrors a soul's rebellion against its own purification. Harry grows angry, defiant, lost in doubt. He refuses guidance, feels abandoned even by Dumbledore. Purgatory is not peace, it is trial. His visions, his connection to Voldemort, his torment in the Ministry, all of it serves as a painful cleansing of pride and self-righteousness. Only after Sirius's death does Harry begin to surrender the illusion of control. Dumbledore's words, "Iggy, you care so much you feel as though you will bleed to death with the pain of it," become the voice of grace within purgatory's suffering. In The Half-Blood Prince, the tone shifts to acceptance and understanding. The castle, still timeless, seems more fragile now, as if Harry's soul has begun to outgrow it. He witnesses Dumbledore's decline, learns the story of Tom Riddle, a boy not unlike himself, but one who failed the tests of purgatory. Riddle clung to his earthly fear of death, creating Horcruxes to tether himself to the mortal world. Harry, in contrast, learns that to defeat Voldemort he must be willing to die, the greatest act of courage, and the final stage of purification is surrender. Dumbledore's calm acceptance of death, whispering "Severus, please," becomes the model Harry must follow. When the final book opens, the symbolism becomes almost undeniable. The journey into the forest, the self-sacrifice, the strange encounter at King's Cross, all echo the passage of the soul into the next life. In that luminous white station, Harry meets Dumbledore again, alive and peaceful, surrounded by light. The setting is not random. King's Cross, the crossing of kings, becomes a metaphor for the threshold between worlds. "Is this real?" Harry asks, "or has this been happening inside my head?" Dumbledore smiles and answers, "Of course it is happening inside your head, Harry, but why on earth should that mean it is not real?" It is the perfect description of purgatory, a world both within and beyond, where the mind and the spirit merge. Even the ghosts of Hogwarts seem to play their part in this theory. Nearly headless Nick, the Bloody Baron, moaning Myrtle, all are souls who, for one reason or another, cannot move on. They are reminders to Harry of what happens when one clings too tightly to the past. Dumbledore's portrait, ever watchful and kind, might not be a painting at all, but the spiritual echo of a guide who never truly left. In this sense, Harry's mentors and friends, even those who die, remain with him not because of magic, but because they too are travellers in this in-between place. Consider also the way time behaves in Hogwarts. The world outside seems suspended. The war grows and fades, yet within those walls, Harry relives patterns of trial and forgiveness, temptation and grace. Even his return to the Dursleys each summer feels like a descent, a step back into darkness before re-entering the light of the castle. In purgatory, the soul must confront its own attachments repeatedly before it can be freed. Harry's greatest fear, losing those he loves, is tested over and over until at last he learns that love cannot be lost even in death. Voldemort's destruction, then, is more than the defeat of evil. It is the final release of the fragmented self. Each Horcrux destroyed is another piece of sin, arrogance, or fear, burned away. The moment Harry walks willingly into the Forbidden Forest, ready to die, he fulfills the journey of every purified soul, to surrender the self entirely. When the curse hits him and he falls, it is not a second death. It is completion. The battle that follows his return to the living may be nothing more than a symbolic rebirth. The soul, now clean, choosing light. What makes this theory so unsettling is how seamlessly it fits the emotional rhythm of the story. Harry never truly seeks ordinary life, not wealth, not fame, not even peace. What he seeks is meaning, reconciliation, and love beyond death. In the end, he achieves all three. The last lines of the saga, "All was well," sound less like an ending and more like absolution. His soul, finally free of fear and guilt, rests in peace. The scar that once burned with pain no longer hurts. The wound of life has closed. To read Harry Potter through this lens is to see not a tale of magic, but of transcendence. Hogwarts ceases to be a castle of stone and becomes a cathedral of the soul, a place of learning, forgiveness, and final redemption. Each spell, each friendship, each loss is a lesson in letting go. What began with a boy in a cupboard ends with a spirit ascending beyond it. And if it is true, if the boy who lived was the boy who died, then J.K. Rowling's world becomes not just a story of good and evil, but of the mysterious beauty that lies between them, the quiet, eternal light of a soul finding its way home. Number 21. Harry, the future founder of Hogwarts. There is a theory circulating among devoted Harry Potter fans that turns the familiar story upside down and transforms the boy who lived into something much greater than anyone ever imagined. According to this theory, Harry Potter did not simply defeat Lord Voldemort and bring peace to the wizarding world. Instead, he became one of the original founders of Hogwarts itself. The idea is wild, almost blasphemous to traditional canon, yet it weaves together so many mysterious threads from the books that it begins to sound almost plausible. The premise is simple. After the war, after all the bloodshed and loss, Harry was sent back in time, by accident or divine design, through a magical anomaly, possibly involving Fawkes, Dumbledore's phoenix. Stripped of his memories, he became Godric Gryffindor, one of the 4 founders of the most famous magical school in history. At first glance, this theory sounds absurd. How could Harry, a modern boy who grew up under the stairs at number 4 Privet Drive, possibly transform into a medieval wizard of myth and legend? Yet fans argue that the clues were there all along. Gryffindor and Potter share more than a name. They share a soul. Both are defined by courage, loyalty, and the burning belief that goodness is worth fighting for. In the Philosopher's Stone, Dumbledore tells Harry, "It takes a great deal of bravery to stand up to our enemies, but just as much to stand up to our friends." That lesson becomes Harry's compass throughout his life and, according to the theory, becomes the very principle upon which Gryffindor House was built centuries earlier. The connection between Harry and the Sword of Gryffindor is one of the key elements that fuels this speculation. The sword appears to any true Gryffindor in need, yet it responds to Harry more than anyone else. It is as if the sword recognizes him, not as a descendant or a worthy successor, but as its rightful owner. When Harry pulls the sword from the sorting hat in the Chamber of Secrets, the moment is not just symbolic triumph over the basilisk. It might be an echo through time, the sword returning to the hand that forged its legend. The Goblin Griphook later describes how goblins believe ownership belongs to the maker, not the wielder. Perhaps in some metaphysical sense, the sword belongs to Harry, because Harry once was Godric Gryffindor, the one who created or commissioned it in the first place. Fans point to the mysterious properties of phoenixes as another possible key to this temporal enigma. Fawkes, Dumbledore's phoenix, has always been portrayed as a creature beyond the normal boundaries of time and death. He dies and is reborn from his ashes. He appears exactly when he is needed most. At the end of the Deathly Hallows, after Harry sacrifices himself and returns from King's Cross, he experiences something that feels almost like resurrection. He was not sure whether he was dead or alive, Rowling writes, nor was he certain that he had been asleep or awake. Some fans interpret this passage as more than a metaphor. What if Harry's return from the limbo-like King's Cross station was not back to the same timeline, but through the Phoenix's power into another age entirely? Fawkes's final song could have been not a farewell but a guide, leading Harry into the distant past where his destiny awaited. In this new time, disoriented and memoryless, Harry would have found himself in an age when magic was raw and untamed. He might have wandered across the moors of Britain, guided only by a deep, instinctive belief in courage and unity. Legends tell of Godric Gryffindor hailing from the wild moorlands, a man of immense bravery who fought dark wizards and beasts to protect Muggleborns. That description could easily fit an older Harry, scarred by war and driven by the same ideals that defined his youth. If his memories were wiped away, what would remain? His courage, his sense of justice, his love for friends, all the traits that came to define Gryffindor House itself. The symbolic meaning of Harry's last name, Potter, also plays into this narrative. A potter is a creator, a shaper of form from clay. In a metaphorical sense, Harry creates Hogwarts, the institution that shapes generations of young witches and wizards. Godric Gryffindor was one of 4 visionaries who moulded the foundations of magical education, forming something enduring out of chaos. Just as a potter forms vessels that outlast their maker, Harry's legacy as the founder would outlive him by centuries. The name, once ordinary, becomes prophetic, a sign of his hidden destiny to create the very home that would later raise him. What makes this theory even more compelling is the cyclical structure of Harry's story. It begins and ends with Hogwarts. It is both his cradle and his destiny. "I'm not going home," he once told Dumbledore's portrait in the Deathly Hallows. Not really. The line, meant to signify his willingness to face death, gains new meaning in this theory. Hogwarts is his home, but not just in memory or sentiment. It is his creation, his legacy, his eternal loop. The boy who once entered its halls as a student may have been the man who built them centuries earlier, unknowingly fulfilling a destiny written across time. The moral qualities of Gryffindor House reflect the lessons Harry learned through his trials. The emphasis on bravery, chivalry, and daring is not the ideology of a warrior, but of a survivor who understands that fear can only be conquered by love. The Sorting Hat itself, enchanted by the founders, places students according to the essence of their souls. When it tells Harry, "You would have done well in Slytherin," it hints that Harry's balance between ambition and courage mirrors that of the founders themselves, individuals who were not merely caricatures of virtue, but complex beings capable of both light and shadow. Gryffindor's humanity feels lived in, experienced, as if born from someone who truly understood the price of bravery. Some versions of the theory take it further, proposing that Dumbledore himself may have known, or at least suspected, this truth. His cryptic trust in Harry often seems to transcend logic. He tells Harry, "You are protected in ways you cannot imagine." What if those ways referred not only to Lily's sacrifice, but to the deeper web of time itself? Perhaps Dumbledore, ever the master of secrets, glimpsed the truth in one of his experiments with the pensieve or his studies of ancient magic. Fawkes, loyal to both Dumbledore and Harry, may have been the living link between the two eras, bound to guide his master from one lifetime to the next. Another intriguing clue lies in the Sorting Hat itself. Created from Gryffindor's hat, it becomes a sentient artifact that endures through centuries, filled with the founders' thoughts and personalities. When it speaks to Harry, it seems to recognize him more intimately than it should. "You're difficult." "Very difficult," it muses. "Plenty of courage, I see." That exchange could be more than simple sorting banter. It might be the echo of a consciousness meeting itself, a fragment of Godric recognizing the spark of its original self within the boy. Even the magical artifacts Harry interacts with seem to connect him to the founder's spirit. The sword of Gryffindor, the hat, even the portrait-lined walls of Hogwarts respond to him in ways that suggest familiarity. After all, Hogwarts itself is almost alive, shifting and breathing with magic. If it was partially built or enchanted by Harry in another lifetime, perhaps that explains its loyalty to him. Doors open, staircases align, and allies appear when he most needs them. The castle does not merely protect him, it remembers him. In many mythic traditions, heroes become gods or founders after death, their deeds immortalized through time. Harry's journey mirrors those archetypes, the orphaned child who conquers evil, dies, and returns reborn. In mythology, such figures often seed the world for future generations. The transformation from mortal to legend would fit perfectly with the mythic aura surrounding Gryffindor's name. In this interpretation, Hogwarts is not only a school, but a monument to Harry's journey through life, death, and rebirth, a sanctuary created by the boy who once longed for a home. The temporal paradox, at the heart of this theory, gives it a haunting beauty. If Harry truly became Gryffindor, then he created the environment that made his own childhood salvation possible. He built the very castle that would one day shelter his younger self. Time becomes a circle, unbroken and eternal, bound by the same love that saved him from Voldemort's curse. The words inscribed in the spirit of the castle, "Help will always be given at Hogwarts to those who ask for it," gain an almost spiritual dimension. Help is given because Harry ensured it, because centuries earlier he vowed that no child would ever be left alone in the dark again. And so the theory, however fantastical, resonates because it feels emotionally true. Harry's story has always been about finding a home, about turning pain into protection. Whether or not he truly became Godric Gryffindor is irrelevant. What matters is that he became what Gryffindor stood for. The man and the myth merge into one continuum, as if history itself bends to the strength of his character. In the end, perhaps that is the real magic. Hogwarts was not simply a school founded by 4 powerful wizards, but a living embodiment of courage, love, and sacrifice. And if the heart of that magic beats in rhythm with Harry's own, then maybe, just maybe, the castle remembers its maker every time the Sorting Hat whispers a new name beneath the vaulted ceiling. Number 22. Moaning Myrtle, the Prophet. It begins with the quiet echo of tears in the second-floor girls' bathroom, the same sound that every Hogwarts student has heard at least once. Moaning Myrtle, forever sobbing near the cracked sink, became one of the school's most famous ghosts, not because of her tragedy, but because of her unending presence. Yet somewhere in those cries and complaints, a strange theory has emerged among devoted Harry Potter fans, a theory claiming that Myrtle was far more than a pitiful spirit. According to them, Myrtle was a prophetess, a seer whose gift of foresight was dismissed, mocked, and ultimately silenced. Her haunting, they believe, was not random but necessary, the eternal echo of someone who once glimpsed the darkness sleeping within Hogwarts. Before her death, Myrtle Warren was known to be shy, awkward, and often bullied. She hid behind thick glasses and spent most of her time avoiding others. However, those who study the events of Chamber of Secrets have noticed peculiar details about her final days. Myrtle once complained, "Somebody was laughing at me. I just went into the girls' bathroom to hide." Yet what if that wasn't the full story? Some fans suggest that in those moments before her death, Myrtle sensed something far beyond her comprehension. Not just danger, but destiny. There are whispers that she spoke of a great evil awakening and of a boy with a serpent's heart. Though such phrases are never mentioned in the books, the theory reimagines her last days as filled with ominous visions that no one took seriously. The Chamber of Secrets was not simply a place of ancient horror. It was a space connected to Slytherin's deepest magic, an intersection of time, legacy, and prophecy. If Myrtle was sensitive to those forces, her mind could have been flooded with visions of what was to come. The basilisk that killed her was not just a beast, it was an instrument of destiny. Fans believe that her death wasn't accidental, but orchestrated by fate, a necessary moment to bind her spirit to the castle itself. When she died, her vision didn't end. Instead, she became an unwilling guardian trapped between worlds, able to perceive what mortals could not. After her death, Myrtle's behavior seems erratic at first glance. She sulks, cries, and seems fixated on her death. But what if these are symptoms of a greater awareness? When Harry first meets her in the Chamber of Secrets, she says with bitter satisfaction, "I remember dying. It was dreadful. I'm not even sure I want to talk about it." Yet her tone often shifts unpredictably, as though she knows more than she lets on. Later, when Harry and Ron search for clues about the chamber, It is Myrtle who leads them closer, indirectly guiding them to the truth. It was she who remembered seeing great yellow eyes before her death, a detail that unlocked the mystery of the basilisk. Fans argue that this memory was not just a recollection, but part of her ongoing connection to the dark forces within Hogwarts. In a way, Myrtle's ghostly existence mirrors that of a seer trapped between dimensions. Her bathroom becomes a place of strange coincidences. It is there that Harry, Ron, and Hermione brew Polyjuice Potion, and there that Harry discovers the entrance to the chamber itself. Why this bathroom? Why her? Many believe Myrtle's spirit unconsciously drew those destined to confront the serpent's legacy. When Hermione decides to brew the potion, she tells Harry, "We'll need a private place." And it's Myrtle's bathroom that comes to mind. Fans interpret this as more than convenience. They see it as Myrtle's silent intervention, a ghostly nudge toward fate. She may have called Harry there, aware that his path would lead him deeper into the truth she could not reveal in life. What strengthens this theory is the strange intimacy between Myrtle and those who carry burdens of destiny. She forms connections not with ordinary students, but with those haunted by power and pain: Harry Potter, Tom Riddle, and even Draco Malfoy. In The Half-Blood Prince, it is Myrtle who comforts Draco as he wrestles with his impossible task from Voldemort. She says softly, "He's crying. He's very sensitive." But why would she appear to Draco of all people? Perhaps she recognized in him the same mark she once foresaw, the boy with the serpent's heart. Her compassion for him may stem from prophetic recognition rather than pity. She sees patterns repeating: another child. Burdened by darkness, another instrument of the same evil that killed her, Myrtle's connection to Tom Riddle is perhaps the most haunting clue. She was his victim, yet bound to his legacy. In the Chamber of Secrets, it is Riddle's diary, a vessel of memory and prophecy, that awakens the basilisk once more. Some fans speculate that Riddle's soul fragment residing in Hogwarts through the diary remained aware of Myrtle's ghost. They suggest that her spectral energy interfered with his influence, preventing the basilisk from gaining full control over the school. She lingers, one fan theorized, because she must. Her crying may not be sorrow alone, but resistance, a mournful hum that weakens dark enchantments. Like a bell tolling endlessly, she keeps the school from being consumed. Again, there's also the strange way Myrtle appears precisely when Harry needs guidance. When he is searching for the creature's origins, she tells him about her death and the eyes she saw. When he returns to the chamber, she is nowhere to be found, almost as if her role in the prophecy is complete. The timing of her appearances, always tied to the unraveling of Slytherin's secrets, suggests orchestration rather than coincidence. Even Dumbledore once said, "Help will always be given at Hogwarts to those who ask for it." Perhaps that help sometimes comes from unexpected places, from a ghost who once saw too much and still watches over the shadows of the castle. What makes this theory particularly striking is the reinterpretation of Myrtle's tears. They are not merely expressions of misery, but symbols of sight. In many mythologies, tears are associated with prophecy, the water that connects worlds, the reflection that reveals truth. Myrtle's constant weeping could be a manifestation of this spiritual gift. Her sorrow is the price she pays for seeing too clearly. When she tells Harry in the Goblet of Fire, "Try putting your head underwater and you'll see," the line gains new significance. Perhaps she is not speaking only of the bath, but of perspective, urging him to see beneath the surface, to look where others do not. Another piece of evidence lies in her unusual attachment to the physical world. Most ghosts in Hogwarts float aimlessly, detached from material things. Myrtle, however, interacts. Splashing water, hiding in toilets, observing people bathing. Her haunting is unusually tactile, as though she struggles to remain anchored. This, some fans say, is the behavior of a soul caught between realms, still bearing an unfulfilled purpose. Her prophecy did not die with her, and so she lingers, forever trying to influence events from behind the veil. When Harry later enters the chamber to face the basilisk, one can almost imagine Myrtle watching. Her bathroom, after all, holds the entrance, the portal through which both life and death pass. She witnessed her own end there, and she watches now as another child descends into the same darkness. Some believe that when Harry hears the basilisk's voice, Myrtle senses it too. The theory paints her as a spiritual guardian, protecting the castle from total corruption. Without her presence, the chamber might have claimed more lives. Her haunting, once seen as pathetic, becomes an act of eternal vigilance. Myrtle's connection to the cycle of prophecy also aligns with the idea of Hogwarts as a living, conscious entity. The castle remembers, breathes, and protects. Ghosts are not mere echoes, but instruments of its memory. In this view, Myrtle serves as the castle's weeping eye, the one who sees danger first. Her perpetual lamentation keeps the balance between innocence and evil within the school. The fan theory even suggests that Dumbledore knew this on some level. Perhaps his tolerance of her haunting was not indifference but quiet respect. He may have understood that her presence, however inconvenient, was vital. Even after Voldemort's final defeat, Myrtle remains. While other ghosts fade into the background, she continues to weep. Perhaps this persistence means her task is not done. The prophecy may not have ended with Harry's victory. There may still be darkness sleeping under the castle, waiting for another awakening. Myrtle's watch is endless, her tears the reminder that some knowledge can never rest. "I've been dead for years," she once said bitterly, "and it hasn't made a difference." But maybe it has. Maybe every tear she sheds is another thread holding the darkness at bay. Through this lens, Myrtle Warren transforms from a pitiful ghost into one of Hogwarts' most mysterious figures, a prophetess silenced too soon, her voice dismissed as madness. The fan theory gives her story tragic grandeur. The bathroom becomes her temple, her cries a warning, her presence a shield. And perhaps, when Harry once stumbled upon her crying stall and found the clue that led to the polyjuice potion, it wasn't coincidence at all. It was the final act of a seer still whispering through eternity, guiding the chosen one from beyond the veil. Number 23, Tom Riddle, Dumbledore's Experiment. In a silent chamber behind Dumbledore's office, the great wizard is said to have once stared deeply into the pensive, contemplating the hidden recesses of memory. In that moment, he envisioned not merely a mind to observe, but a being to shape. According to the darker version of events, Albus Dumbledore, young, brilliant, and obsessed with the nature of evil, resolved to create an embodiment of darkness, a boy born not only with magical potential, but with something lacking, something cold. That boy would become Tom Marvolo Riddle. In this theory, Dumbledore played the role not of guardian, but of unwitting, or worse, willful demiurge. It is said that the experiment began long before Tom ever entered Hogwarts. Dumbledore supposedly manipulated events in the orphanage, steering the fate of Merope Gaunt and the circumstances of Tom's conception and early childhood. He saw in the orphaned, loveless Tom the perfect canvas, a child with magical heritage but deprived of family warmth. The aim was to test the limits of the human soul. How far could a wizard go when cut off from empathy, compassion, or human connection? The theory holds that Dumbledore's ambition was to isolate the core of evil itself, to separate darkness from love and observe what remained. As Tom Riddle grew at the orphanage, the supporters of this theory imagine that Dumbledore remained a hidden watcher. He may have subtly nudged guardians, influenced caretakers, erased or altered memories, all to keep Tom's life barren of emotional nourishment. Thus, when Tom later claimed there is no good and evil, only power and those too weak to seek it, as he once said in his later years, that sentiment was not merely ideological, but deeply personal. Tom, speaking from a soul starved of warmth. In that emptiness, Dumbledore had, knowingly or unknowingly, participated. By the time Tom received his Hogwarts letter, the experiment's contours had already taken shape. Hogwarts would become a controlled environment in which his development could be monitored. Dumbledore, in his capacity as Transfiguration Professor and later as Headmaster, could watch Tom's experiments with Horcruxes, his descent into dark arts, his alliances with secret societies. The theory suggests that Dumbledore subtly guided Tom toward temptation, placing him in contact with dark texts, allowing access to subjects like the Chamber of Secrets, and ultimately giving him the chance to split his soul. In effect, Dumbledore watched the creature he had helped birth, waiting to see whether he would survive or self-destruct. One striking piece of evidence believers point to is Dumbledore's own knowledge of Tom's past, his ability to walk unerringly through the gaunt shack to trace Riddle's family line, to descend into the cave where a Horcrux lay. In normal circumstances, such knowledge would require painstaking research or lucky insight. But in this theory, Dumbledore already knew because he had orchestrated much of it. When Dumbledore speaks to Harry of "those are the very rooms I walked in long ago when seeking the truth of Salazar Slytherin," he seems to come from memory rather than scholarship, and perhaps from his own designs. And what of Dumbledore's fondness for secrecy and withholding? The theory paints the portrait of a man burdened by guilt, concealing the true origin of Riddle. His cryptic statements, "I dare not tell you everything," or "you will understand in time," take on a darker hue. They conceal not strategy or wisdom, but shame and fear that his own experiment might be discovered. His insistence on protecting Harry, even his restraint in confronting Voldemort at times, may reflect Dumbledore's dread of avowing his own culpability. One concrete example often cited is the scene in Half-Blood Prince, when Dumbledore shows Tom's memories in the Pensieve, the memory of Tom's mother Merope's death, the memory of his father's abandonment. Dumbledore intervenes in those recollections, selecting which pieces Harry sees. A believer in the theory claims Dumbledore suppressed or altered fragments, omitting any evidence of his own hand. The selective display implies editorial control, not merely viewing memory, but shaping narrative. If Dumbledore can curate the past, then surely he could have seeded Tom's childhood for his own experiment. As Tom's power matured and he set about hiding Horcruxes, the theory imagines Dumbledore not entirely as adversary, but as a reluctant warden of consequences. He worked behind the scenes to limit Tom's damage, intervening via the Order of the Phoenix or sending Harry to retrieve locket or ring. Yet he never wholly intervened earlier, claiming that doing so would violate free will. In this telling, his restraint is not modesty but responsibility. He could not destroy the child he made until it threatened the world. The culmination of this dark arc lands in the Malfoy Manor and the Forbidden Forest. In the final conflict, when Harry approaches Voldemort in the forest, Dumbledore's spectre looms close. Why did he allow Harry to present himself as a sacrifice? Because in this version, Dumbledore believed only someone intimately tied to Tom's soul, someone beyond the experiment, could end it. Harry's sacrifice restores the balance, but also severs the experiment's logic. The monster must be slain with assistance from that which was not subject to the original design. Critics of the theory point out that Dumbledore showed genuine affection to others, to Minerva McGonagall, to Hermione, to students. But believers respond that Dumbledore's love was always cautious, tempered by fear. He may have loved Harry, but never allowed emotional chaos. The same Dumbledore who refused to tell Harry everything, who manipulated others' fates, who allowed great suffering. All these traits suit a creator who regrets his creation, yet cannot wholly disown it. Another specific detail cited is the moment in Chamber of Secrets when Tom Riddle's memory speaks to Harry. "I have seen your heart. I know you have greatness inside you." That claim echoes Dumbledore's own voice of focus and prophecy. Perhaps Riddle learned the craft of persuasion from Dumbledore's long tutelage, unseen and unfelt, a ghostly mentorship formed before Dumbledore dared to reveal himself. In this reading, the brilliance of Dumbledore's appeal to Harry reflects a mirror of his temptation of Tom, first shaping, then seducing. The theory further notes the duality in Dumbledore's behaviors, completely aware at times, at other times bewildered by Tom's evil. He warns Harry, yet seems caught off guard by Horcruxes and by the Elder Wand. Believers interpret this duality not as narrative inconsistency, but as the tortured conflict of a creator who cannot fully account for the chaos he unleashed. He sees patterns he himself planted, but fears the unpredictability of autonomy. Supporters point to Dumbledore's obsession with Nicholas Flamel, the Philosopher's Stone, with rings and relics, tools that bridge mortality and magic. Dumbledore studied long lives, death resistance, soul repair. Was that because he sought a method to undo his creation? Perhaps Dumbledore's quest to understand Horcruxes really disguised his desperate wish to unmake his own failed experiment, to reclaim the monster's fragments before they spread further. Yet the darker interpretation insists Dumbledore never sought to destroy Tom until too late. He feared opening the Pandora's box of his own guilt. Only when Harry emerged, not Tom's creation, but an external force, did Dumbledore allow direct confrontation. In his dying moments, Dumbledore leans back from control. The traps he constructed, the alliances he forged, the sacrifices he permitted, all form the final reluctant release of an experiment gone wild. Thus the theory leaves us with a tragic Dumbledore, no longer merely wise headmaster, but wounded demiurge forced to hide in shadows. The boy he made turned on the world. He watches successors, guides heroes, but always in regret, a wizard who tested the edge of darkness and unleashed a horror he could not contain. This is the radical reading of Dumbledore's creation of Tom Riddle. Number 24, Peter Pettigrew, didn't die. They said he died in the cellar of Malfoy Manor, strangled by the very gift his master had bestowed upon him. A silver hand that shimmered with Voldemort's dark magic. The hand he had been given made a sudden movement. As though it had a will of its own, J.K. Rowling wrote in The Deathly Hallows. It caught Peter Pettigrew around the neck and squeezed. The image was so vivid, so final, that few readers questioned it. But over the years, a strange murmur began to echo through the Harry Potter fandom. What if Wormtail never died at all? What if that silver hand didn't kill him, but merely silenced him long enough for him to vanish once again into the shadows? Fans began to dissect every line of that scene, every sentence, that described his supposed death. Harry and Ron never actually saw him take his last breath. They were trapped, half-conscious, and when they escaped the dungeon, there was no mention of a body. Rowling's narration only said the hand fell to the ground and that Pettigrew collapsed. In the chaos that followed, the escape, the battle, the burning of the Malfoy estate, no one ever confirmed that Wormtail's corpse was found. The wizarding world simply assumed he was dead. Yet if there's one thing history has taught us about Peter Pettigrew, it's that he thrives on being underestimated. The argument that his hand killed him depends entirely on Voldemort's enchantment being absolute, a perfect curse of loyalty. But what if it wasn't? Voldemort's magic was powerful, yes, but flawed by arrogance. Pettigrew's hand, forged from silver, was a symbol of his servitude, designed to punish him should he betray his master. Yet magic of that kind often has its own perverse logic. What if the hand, sensing its master's fall in the Battle of Hogwarts, released its grip, leaving its victim paralyzed rather than lifeless? After all, a dead servant is useless, but a silenced, hidden one might still serve a future purpose. Those who believe in the Pettigrew lives theory point out that Voldemort's creations rarely functioned as expected after his death. The dark mark faded but did not vanish completely. The remnants of his Horcrux magic continued to ripple through time. Why, then, should the silver hand simply disappear? Some fans have even speculated that the hand contained a fragment of Voldemort's magic, a living connection that could not die so easily. It was, after all, created with wandless magic, the same kind of raw, dark power that birthed Nagini's cursed form and animated the Inferi. A spell of that depth might not stop with the death of its maker. The absence of Pettigrew's body remains one of the most compelling mysteries. In every account of the Second Wizarding War, from the reports written by the Daily Prophet to the personal recollections of survivors, no one ever mentions what happened to him afterward. When the Ministry catalogued the fallen Death Eaters, Wormtail's name was curiously missing. Even his wand was never recovered. The lack of physical proof has fueled endless debates in online forums and fan conventions. Could a man as cowardly, yet as cunning, as Peter Pettigrew truly have gone down without a trace? There is another overlooked detail. Pettigrew was an animagus, capable of transforming into a small grey rat. In the heat of the battle, with wand sparks flying and screams filling the dungeon, what would it have taken for him to shrink down, slip between the stones and vanish into the tunnels below? Fans recall that he survived for 12 years as Scabbers, hiding in plain sight in the Weasley household. He had perfected the art of invisibility without spells. To believe that he wouldn't attempt the same trick one last time is to forget the defining quality of Peter Pettigrew, his desperation to survive at any cost. Some theorists connect Pettigrew's supposed survival to the mysterious magical disturbances reported after Voldemort's defeat. In the early post-war years, several auras, including Kingsley Shacklebolt, mentioned in interviews that traces of dark magic persisted in regions once controlled by the Death Eaters. "There are remnants out there," Kingsley was quoted as saying. "We don't know what they are yet." Could one of those remnants have been a man, half cursed, half alive, nursing his broken loyalty in some dark corner of the magical world? One compelling fan account describes a supposed sighting in Knockturn Alley. A shopkeeper from Borgin and Burke's claimed to have seen a shriveled man with a silver hand hidden beneath his cloak, buying powdered bezoar and dragon liver late one winter night. The witness said the man's face was pale, almost grey, and one of his eyes twitched constantly, as though battling against something unseen. The Ministry dismissed the story as drunken fantasy, but those who study dark magic found the detail intriguing. Bezoar and dragon liver, when combined, can create a potion that counters paralysis. Was Pettigrew attempting to heal himself, or to alter the magic of his cursed hand? There is also the curious relationship between the silver hand and moonlight. Silver in wizarding lore is deeply tied to the cycles of the moon, to werewolves, and to transformation. Pettigrew's closest companion for years had been Remus Lupin, a werewolf whose curse reacted violently to silver. What if Voldemort chose silver for a reason beyond symbolism? Some fans suggest the hand was designed not to kill, but to transform its wearer under certain conditions, perhaps even to grant him a form of immortality, a twisted echo of the animagus gift. The idea seems wild, yet it fits the poetic cruelty of Voldemort's designs. Pettigrew, doomed to serve forever, could have been condemned to live on, unable to die, forced to wander unseen. The hand's mysterious connection to Voldemort's power also raises deeper questions. During the final battle, when Voldemort was destroyed, many of his spells unraveled, yet the silver hand was never seen again. If it had simply fallen lifeless beside a dead man, why did no one find it? Objects of dark magic rarely disappear without trace. The Elder Wand returned to rest. The Horcruxes were obliterated, but Pettigrew's hand vanished. Some whisper that it reattached itself, that its magic bound to its master once more, and that somewhere, deep in the forbidden reaches of the magical world, Peter Pettigrew still breathes, his hand now his only companion. Perhaps the most haunting evidence lies in the tone of Pettigrew's final moment. Rowling's prose, usually explicit about death, is curiously restrained here. There is no mention of finality, no he died, no his body went still. Instead, we read that the hand released him and fell. The language suggests not a death, but an interruption, a pause in the story, not an ending. For a man defined by his ability to escape, to slither from one identity to another, that pause feels deliberate. It is as though the narrative itself leaves room for resurrection. In the years following the fall of Voldemort, many of the surviving Death Eaters either surrendered or went into hiding. Yet no one ever claimed to have seen Wormtail's ghost, a curious omission in a world where even Myrtle and the Bloody Baron linger. If he had truly died, his spirit would have been trapped by guilt, by the immense, magical weight of betrayal. But there are no reports of a ghostly rat-like figure haunting Malfoy Manor or skulking through the Ministry ruins. It's as though his soul simply left. And maybe that is the most telling clue of all. Fan fiction writers have embraced this theory with zeal, imagining Wormtail's quiet life after the war. A man stripped of purpose, haunted by memories, hiding among magical creatures in the deep forests of Albania, the same place where Voldemort once regained his strength. Some imagine him as a hermit feeding on insects consumed by remorse. Others portray him as a schemer, biding his time, waiting for the right moment to emerge. A few even dare to suggest that he found remnants of Voldemort's essence and became the vessel for something darker, a living echo of the Dark Lord himself. The notion that Pettigrew survived serves a powerful narrative function. It keeps alive the unsettling truth that evil rarely dies cleanly. It crawls away, mutates, hides. Wormtail embodies that cowardly persistence, the way corruption lingers even after the war is won. To believe that he is still out there, somewhere in the magical fringes, is to acknowledge that the story of the Dark Lord's followers never truly ended. It merely went underground, waiting for a new form.